What is up, everybody? I gotta say, Rolo, I love that music that you picked for this opening. I love the opening set. I love everything about it. It just gets me, like, I'm always off, when it's doing its little thing, I'm kind of just grooving to the music. It kind of gets me into it. It takes all my my worldly troubles away, and we are in the video game set, gentlemen. We could not have Ski God today, but up top he is there shown because he is a part of the quadumvirate who is a part of this. But today I do have Rolo and Kenny. Really, I love you, Ski God, but the two most important people I have here, including me, I don't matter either, because these are the two that have really gone into the history of Bitcoin Shrooms. And you got to remember, the history of Bitcoin Shrooms isn't just the history of Bitcoin Shrooms, it's the history of Bitcoin itself. And that's why so many of us are so excited to talk about this. And Ski God, he's no cheap ass. He's paying the 12. He's paying the $12.99. He's flying with Wi-Fi and he's patching in. So Ski God, feel free to comment anytime. If we rip on you too hard and you're trying to defend yourself, I may or may not post it on the screen. I don't know. That's up to me. Sorry, I got that control today. But safe flights. Definitely pipe in there. But Kenny and Rollo, welcome to the show again. This is our second episode, or in vernacular of the Bitcoin world, episode 1. I'm fired up. Rollo, how you doing today, man?
Yeah, good morning, guys. Doing great. Shaking off a little night shift last night from work. Glad to be here. Supercharged. We've got some awesome shrooms to go into today. Yeah, I love that track, man. Got that Pavlovian conditioning. I start salivating whenever I hear that, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna crack into some good shrooms.
Yeah, tell everybody who this is. This is who is it again?
This is Aphex Twin.
Oh, that's right.
It's one of their oldest albums. Yeah.
And the song's called Ptolemy, and we realize, or Ptolemy, probably it's pronounced like the true Roman way. But this song, the cool thing about Aphex Twin, unlike a lot of commercial famous artists, this is free and clear to use in broadcasts, which is just, to me, super cool and awesome in an age where the labels own literally every catalog from any artist that matters.
Aphex Twin was really a pioneer in the digital space. They really kind of kicked off EDM and electronic music, got it all started. So
yeah,
cool
absolutely. So Kenny, welcome. The other expert in the room. How you feeling today, fam?
Yo, what's up, guys? Super excited to go into all these shrooms today. You guys know I love a Bitcoin shroom, and yeah, we get to dig into a couple of really cool ones today. So yeah, super fired up.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go. So in our episode 0, if you guys didn't catch it, had a huge turnout. We were so excited. And we talked about basically the overview of Bitcoin Shrooms, but also kind of the foundations and the overview of Bitcoin, how we got into Bitcoin Shrooms, why we fell in love with it, and how it's so intricately tied into the Bitcoin history. We did talk about the sovereign individual, which is actually the first Bitcoin Shroom, but it is a part of a bigger pack, which Rolo's going to get into in a second, and Kenny as well. So we wanted to include the sovereign individual, aka the crown shroom, again, because it is a part of a bigger picture. So Rolo, why don't you kick us off and just take us through, we could just do an overview. There's a lot of categories. Shroomtoshi was very smart and organized in how he did this, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Shroomtoshi had a method to the madness. All the shrooms were put up on the site in order, and they go by thematic category. So just to give our viewers a reminder, we aim to break down these shrooms, go into the deep history behind each of them, as well as maybe the artistic symbolism, and talk about any other notable events associated with them. So our method here, first each shroom we're going to go into the art design. We're going to talk subjectivity. Then we're going to go into actually Bitcoin history and what kind of things these shrooms might have been referencing. So like you said, last time we got into shroom number 715, sovereign individual, and just a quick recap of this one since we did it last time. This was pretty much where it all started. We've got the crown king. Like I said, I love this shroom. Very clean design, golden red. It's beautiful. The crown says it all. And this is one of those shrooms that just really makes you think about the entire collection. It's like I said last time, very famous for having auctioned on the Sotheby's platform. It was one of the first shrooms that was sold there. Um, Smashed the expectations at about 107,000 USD, and we'll let our users kind of price that in Bitcoin. They didn't list it on the auction site, but this shroom, it's got a lot packed into it. So Shroomtoshi had a description that he left behind with every single shroom, and this particular one said, "So the journey begins, sovereign individual. You'll own Bitcoin and you'll be happy." What was nice, at least for this shroom, was that Sotheby's did us a favor, and they probably interviewed ST, as they have some quotes from him. And um, it says on the platform, "The Bitcoin shroom's journey starts with the sovereign individual. This is a nod at Rees Mogg's prescient book, The Sovereign Individual, which is a famous essay written in 1998 that forecast, among other things, the emergence of cryptography-based digital currencies intended to exist outside the control of governments." And so there's a book. We can link it to anybody who wants to check it out. But I thought this is kind of where things were getting interesting. Kicking off the entire collection, we've got a reference back to 1998 to a book forecasting the emergence of digital currencies, as well as the struggle between individual private control and government control. And so this was a very symbolic shroom in the sense that, I think the underlying message here was, when you own Bitcoin, you are your own sovereign individual that controls your own funds, and there's no one that can really do much about that. And that's something that's so unique, and so it's so much of a value add that Bitcoin provides that other things just haven't brought to the table before. So pretty cool that this shroom really kind of kicked it off that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, Ski God reminded us early in the show. I always forget this, but everyone listening, especially all you shroom holders, please share this live broadcast. That's how people see it. Unlike audio spaces, video spaces don't have the network effect quite as good. It's not quite set up for that yet. So share the spaces, make a comment on it. And if you want to see your name live on the TV tube here, post a comment just like BZ did, GM BZ. BZ is a huge shroom holder. And I believe, Rollo, we are probably going to have him on the show at some point because he has a whole, obviously we know he's the spreadsheet king. I just did an audio spaces with him a week ago, but he has really cool takes and how he looks at collections, and Bitcoin Shrooms is no exception. So yes. Everybody, please retweet, please share this spaces with everyone because that's how we get discovered and heard, because we want to educate, talk about Bitcoin Shrooms and Bitcoin in general. So Kenny, what is the sovereign individual like? How does this one resonate with you? Is there other stuff you'd like to share on that?
Yeah, I think it's just the number one stepping stone, right? I think Shroomtoshi really put that in well, that it is more or less your entry into Bitcoin. It's one of the reasons why people turn to Bitcoin, and I think being a sovereign individual is like the foundational layer of becoming a Bitcoin embracer. And therefore, I think it's absolutely mandatory that this is the first Bitcoin shroom. I think the crown really represents what it stands for, and I think the book is obviously also a must read, but much more, I think it's really important that people understand what it means to be sovereign and how that changes your behavior with Bitcoin. So absolute grail, one of the best shrooms out there for sure, hands down.
Yeah, 100%. And I just want to echo what both of you said. This book was written in 1998. 1998. Remember, Bitcoin came out in 2000 and nine, January 3rd, 2009 was when the first block went. But obviously the white paper was October 31st, Halloween 2008. This was written a decade before. Obviously people were working on things like eCash. There were predecessors to this before the Byzantine generals problem was kind of finally figured out in the last piece of Bitcoin that needed to lay the rails for the pure decentralization. But the fact that this was written a decade before, not only did he talk about a permissionless, non-state sanctioned money that you could transfer around, but he also talked about like cryptography, SHA-256, and how that would allow you to communicate privately outside of the corporations and the government. I slipped up, said corporations instead of government, but right now we both know it in the US at least, they're kind of one and the same, right? That the corporations write a lot of the laws, and we're trying to bring this back to the individual. So super important book, and Shroomtoshi knew that. And with the sovereign individual number one, it's very kind of prescient that one has the crown, and it's the kickoff to this whole thing. So it's a journey that we're excited to go on with you, but permissionless, not your keys, not your crypto, which we'll get into, and the privacy of and freedom of speech to have communication. And what the sovereign individual said is governments will and corporations will get weaker because of that. And, if citizens can get stronger and they can get weaker, that's a win for us. Does anyone else want to add anything else to the sovereign individual before we move on to the next one?
I think the only thing that I'll just say is that I want to point out to our audience that as we delve into this first major thematic category, this being, our kickoff shroom, this theme is about fundamental principles, which is one thing that gets me kind of excited and why these shrooms that we're going to cover are so special. The message behind each one of these is a little bit deeper and a bit more powerful. And I think that's what makes this first series of 8 so cool. So just wanted to give you guys a little, sky high outline of what we're doing and how we're going into this. And as well, when we go through each shroom, we have, a method to our madness. And I just want to remind you, each time we're going to kind of kick off with the aesthetics. Then we're going to go into, market history, any interesting factoids. And then last, we're going to just deep dive straight into the lore, just get into it. So
yeah, and then if anyone has comments, please post it in, and we will put it up here, and we will answer questions on the fly, because this just makes it more fun and exciting to us. So GM base chain. Yeah, go ahead, Kenny.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one more thing, and that Shroomtoshi, when he kind of released the comments on the Bitcoin Shrooms, he never categorized these. So it's really important to note that it's our interpretation of these shroom categories. If you look really deeply into the Bitcoin Shrooms, you will probably note that there are different categories of how they are set up. I think it becomes clear that there was a very strategic and logical way of thought of how they are ordered within the collection. But again, this is our interpretation of what this is. Again, shout out to Rich. We worked a lot on that together before to kind of deciphering what the themes could be. And they could be interpreted differently as well. So just keep that in mind when we're going through these.
Yeah, huge shout out to Rich Wake and Dakian. Yeah, go ahead, Rolo. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, no worries. I was just going to echo that and just say, I remember in certain conversations when talking to Shroomtoshi when they were actually still around, he made it very obvious that he was always there to answer questions about the shrooms, and you could ask him anything. He wanted, he obviously had things to tell, but he, just short of revealing everything about, what he was trying to do here, he left a little bit shrouded in mystery. And like you said, it was up to us to kind of piece things back together, and everyone's going to have their own subjective interpretation of what these might mean. And he even did make a point of that. He said at one point, people are going to look into these pieces in different ways, and that's totally fine. So definitely important to remind the audience that, these thematic categories are things that we've kind of identified probably were how they were ordered, and you can really see that from what the messages are behind here. But great points.
Yeah, good point. And I know you touched on it, Rolo, but we have the Sotheby's picture up here now. This one, there was a lot of 3 that went out, all sold separately. This one, and I believe we're covering at least one more today, but this one did go for $107,950, which I believe in December of 23 Bitcoin. God, was it still in the 20,000 range? It was probably more in the 30 or 40,000 range. So two and a half Bitcoin, which for now, for this one to me is just like literally free. But all three of them I know went for about 10.7 Bitcoin or $450,000.
Madness.
Pure madness. So, okay, cool. Like transitioning on, we're going to go to the second one in the series. Kenny, why don't you kick us off here? And Dakian, I got to say, this is like the best website ever. I can green screen his website and it looks like it's within the video game. And I can just scroll right through them so I don't have to put all the pictures in the fancy switcher program for the video. So what do we got, Kenny? What's number 2?
Well, I think this is an obvious one, and yeah, I need to be reminded by Rollo, who's probably got it in front of him, what Shroomtoshi commented exactly. But I believe this is one of the most mandatory rules in the Bitcoin Shrooms. Obviously, not your keys, not your coins. Everybody's seen this, heard of this before. I mean, it's probably overplayed, but people still oftentimes hold a lot of money on centralized exchanges, which this is kind of referring to, right? So I think this is a super cool one. It's really, really clean, and I really like the shadow gradient kind of in the background. I think this is a really cool one, but I'll play it over to Rollo.
Yeah, this one's a beauty. So, visually stunning shroom. I love the clean design. You've got the classic clean design attached to, the key format there. Be honest, this was one of my favorite ones when they first OTC'd. So, I don't know who owns it or who got this thing, but I do remember, this brings back some nostalgia. When I was talking to Shroomtoshi, he had me kind of outline this little pick list of the shrooms that I wanted to get, and I circled this one right away, and he was like, it's available. And I, for whatever reason, there were a couple others that I went for first, and then the second I decided I wanted this thing, it was gone. So it's a beauty, and kudos to whoever grabbed this one. But let's break into it. This shroom, the phrase is one that was popularized by none other than Andreas Antonopoulos. He's a very prominent Bitcoin advocate and an educator in the space, who some of you may be familiar with, and captures a principle that, if you don't control your private keys, like you said, Kenny, you truly do not control your own funds. And that is just a fundamental principle of not only Bitcoin, but really any cryptocurrency that you're going to use. It's something that all users need to know and be aware of. And, this is the warning towards centralized exchanges. So, the phrase aligns with Bitcoin's ethos of decentralization and financial sovereignty. It advocates for users to pretty much take responsibility of their own assets and use their own hardware wallets or other private non-custodial solutions. And so with that, I think it also serves, like I said, as a warning against the dangers of trusting centralized entities. That harks all the way back to events like Mt. Gox collapse in 2014, where a lot of users lost their Bitcoin due to, the company's mismanagement. And so, that phrase, not your keys, not your coins, it's a rallying cry for crypto enthusiasts, and it reminds us to prioritize, again, security and self-reliance. But it also, we're gonna kind of get into the pop culture here, but this phrase also kind of underscores the goal of a cultural movement to, kind of disintermediate traditional financial systems and basically empower individuals to be their own bank, which kind of harks back to that book we talked about. But on the description you mentioned, Shroomtoshi is quoted here as saying, "Welcome to Bitcoin. The first rule of Bitcoin is not your keys, not your coins. The second rule of Bitcoin is not your keys, not your coins." So it's kind of in my opinion, this sounds to me like a play on words, which is echoing the famous movie line from the Fight Club, where Tyler Durden notoriously outlines the ground rules for the Fight Club. And I don't think it's a whimsical reference either. I think it was purposeful. This kind of pop cultural reference was likely meant to highlight Bitcoin's countercultural and rebellious nature, as that movie, was really, steeped in that. So additionally, I think repeating the rule a second time, he says it twice. I think repeating it like that really highlights and underscores the importance of that statement, and that self custody is so foundational to the principle of Bitcoin. Um, there just are no exceptions, just as the rules in Fight Club, are absolute within its narrative as well. So, there's a third actual provision in that statement in the description there, and it says the third rule of Bitcoin: if a central banker yells stop, goes limp, or taps out, you buy more Bitcoin. This rule, it's quite a phrase. This rule is, I think it's maybe symbolic of defiance against traditional financial institutions, namely the central banks, as stated there. But it also kind of reflects Bitcoin's origins as a reaction to the 2008 financial crisis, which is where Bitcoin all kicked off, as you mentioned, and a distrust of those systems.
Right.
And so the part about yelling stop, I think, it's interesting that he's very, purposeful about what he says there. I thought it could represent, warnings or opposition from central banks and governments criticizing Bitcoin or attempting to regulate it out of existence. And then there's a second part that says goes limp or taps out, buy more Bitcoin.
Right.
Probably referring to moments of economic weakness or collapse where the traditional systems just don't work. Things like hyperinflation, etc. And then saying buy the dip.
Yeah.
So that's true number one.
Yeah, no, these are great points, and for all of us, just to bring it more personally too, like everybody remembers the first time that they get into Bitcoin, they've got it, whether it was on Coinbase or Kraken or Binance or whatever, and they moved it to the private wallet, and there's that moment, there's that stomach fluttering moment where you're like, it's gone, and then it appears there, and then you validate it, and it's there, and you're holding your cold card or your Trezor, which I would recommend personally over Ledger. That's just me. But I grew up on a diet of Trace Mayer and Andreas, and he always used to say, yeah, not your keys, not your crypto. He'd say it over and over and over. And he'd also say when, all the corporations were like, well, Bitcoin is silly, but the blockchain, and he'd always go, blockchain or bullshit. So like he was so good at memifying the things that we should do to teach kind of these earlier generations, like self-sovereignty, hold your effing keys, because the banks are over levered, right? And if there's a run on them, like good luck, get in line. And I hear Potter's paying 50 cents on the dollar down the street, so reference to It's a Wonderful Life. But Andreas was a huge force in this, and this one resonates great with me. Everybody should have a hardware wallet. If you don't, run out and get one. Do not store your crap on Coinbase, or keep some of your stuff on Xverse, because a lot of the stuff with ordinals is hard, but have that private wallet. I know Xverse works with Ledger now. I'm not a fan of Ledger, but I will use Ledger when it comes to at least protecting ordinal in combination with like Xverse. But have a hardware wallet to protect your wealth, and so you can pass it down generations. Did I leave you guys speechless? Anyone want to pick up? Do you want to move to the next one?
Yeah, we could kick off the next one. I love where we're going with this. So it's a neat segue into our next shroom, which is number 699, called Nacho Keys, Nacho Cheese. So we'll break down the visuals here. It's a nice shroom. I like the colors. Is it my favorite? Maybe not. It's not in my top 30. I definitely am a fan. It's not the cleanest in terms of symmetry, but I do like the food reference. I'm always a big food theme kind of person. So, but again, not every shroom is going to float everyone's boat. So I don't know too much about the market history, who owns it, where it OTC'd, but haven't seen this one listed personally. But we'll quickly jump into the lore. It actually is an interesting tie-on to that last shroom that we just covered. So this shroom, the phrase says not not your keys, not your coins in the last one, self custody being essential in Bitcoin. I think we're just reiterating that critical lesson here. And I think it's pretty significant that Shroomtoshi chose to dedicate an entirely separate shroom to re-emphasizing that golden rule in crypto. Which, by the way, thinking back, I think maybe is why that key is golden. It makes it a special one for that rule and its symbolism. But I just want to pause for a second. It's crazy, the amount of layers here. You got an entire second shroom, pop cultural references. It's just it's pretty wild. But this shroom, I think it's no more crazy than just a third re-emphasis on that golden rule of crypto. Not your keys, not your coins. So this was a playful piece on that, and I think that's really what it is. But Kenny, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Yeah, I think this is a really cool shroom, to be honest. I think yeah, I totally agree. It's definitely a play on not your keys, not your coins, but I think this is a really fun way of relaying it. I was always really stunned about like how much Shroomtoshi knows about Bitcoin. And he really does know so much to actually even be able to create a collection like the Bitcoin Shrooms. But I feel like not only was he really in tune with Bitcoin history and he really knew his facts, but he also was super intertwined into the whole meme references and like the meme culture, which I think is super cool. And I don't know if this was his original idea or if this came or was like derived from a different meme,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's a really cool spin-off of that most important rule, which I think that's fair to say that is probably one of the most important rules in crypto and of course in Bitcoin as well.
Nacho
Yeah,
cheese, nacho keys.
that's a stumper. I would love to turn that question over to the audience. If anybody has comments on if you've heard that phrase before, nacho keys, nacho cheese, would love to know. I actually don't know, where this reference came from, and maybe it was from Shrimtoshi. If any of you have heard it, drop a comment in there and let us know.
Yeah, I had heard it. It wasn't Andreas. He was more of the
Hmm.
direct route, but it was it wasn't far after that. But yeah, I'd love to know too.
Yeah.
All right,
So we
so
got.
we've covered
Go ahead.
nacho cheese, nacho keys, and not your keys, not your crypto, the Andreas version. So let's move along, gentlemen. Let's go to this one, which is this one's got an interesting story. Oh, I've got to get rid of the green screen because of the. So why don't you go ahead, Roller or Kenny, take it over, and I'll get the color
Sure.
correct. I can't green screen this one because it is green.
Yeah, like the new colorway there. So yeah, this is a legendary shroom, for more than one reason. You know, well, it's not my top 30. Good justification. There are just too many beautiful shrooms, but this thing, aesthetics, super lean, super green, super clean. I love this thing, man. Very symmetric, beautiful shroom placement. Literal as Literally as the seed, pun intended there. But this shroom is also known for being one of the more high-profile ones for a couple of reasons. One being it was also auctioned on the Sotheby's platform. I think this one went for about 101,000. But it also is known for being owned by none other than ZK Shark, who's an anonymous builder in the Bitcoin and ordinal space. And he's hinted several times at a spin off parent child inscription project coming from this shroom called the Bitcoin Bravocados. Really cool looking collection, playful spin off. And we don't know too much about it. We've had a couple of cryptic drops on Twitter, but as of now, we don't know when it will come out or if it will come out, but highly looking forward to it. Um, so, with that said, we'll kind of dig into what this shroom is all about. So it's called BIP 39, and we got an avocado seed in the middle there. So
Hey Rolo,
Shroomtoshi's
before
description.
before we go
Yeah.
on, Ski God did remind me. Let's just tell people what they're playing for. Share the spaces, guys. Let's get these numbers. We had great numbers in the first one. We're flying high here. Just know what you're playing for. We will be giving away a free, what is this, Rolo? A t-shirt or a couple t-shirts? What are we giving away?
We got us a Bitcoin Shrooms pizza shirt here.
That looks nice,
So you
man.
can
That looks
see
like a
there. So we're gonna give away one of these bad boys
quality
today.
cotton that doesn't look like a crappy like Hanes beefy tee, old school. That looks like a soft, drapes off your body, comfortable. So we are going to be giving away one of these, Rolo, to a lucky winner. But you gotta interact with the show. You gotta retweet the show. I mean, look at Stephen Miller. He'd wear the hell out of that. So there's right there. Now we're throwing people in the little bingo basket now. So we got Stephen Miller in there. We got we got Beezy in there. So we got two. And the odds of winning the lottery are 20 trillion to 1, but the odds of winning this right now are 1 in 2 for two people we know. So let's go, people. That make that 1 in 3 people. Nice. So share this spaces. Let's go. Video is not fully optimized on X, but we are going to optimize it by sharing this space and letting people know and educating them about Bitcoin. So that said, Ski God, appreciate you for reminding us. Rolo, back to our programming.
Thank you, good sir. So yeah, we didn't skimp on these t-shirts. We got a nice little cotton giveaway here. So just hit us up after. But yeah, so this shroom BIP39, Shroomtoshi's description that he left on the ordinal said, "Your Bitcoin keys equals 12 to 24 word seed. Don't throw away your BIP39 seed as if it were an avocado seed. This is financial advice." And then I think what was cool was he left a link to the GitHub with the open source code on the Bitcoin Improvement Proposal 39, which is what this shroom centers on. So Shroomtoshi said, this entire statement here, what does it mean? I think we first have to dig into what is BIP 39. So it's an incredibly important landmark upgrade to Bitcoin, which dramatically made private key storage safer, easier, and simpler. And what it does is basically implements a 2048 word catalog of standardized words, which therefore introduced the concept of what's called a mnemonic seed phrase. Many of you have probably seen that when you make a new wallet. Your wallet almost always requires you to write down a 12 to 24 word seed phrase. And these seed phrases, again, use those 12 to 24 words to make what is considered a deterministic cryptography key. So deterministic simply means that any given input of a system will always give the same output. In other words, any particular 12 or 24 word seed phrase is always going to produce the same set of private keys, which are always going to give you access to your wallet and your funds. It actually didn't used to be like that. I think up until about 2014, when this Bitcoin improvement proposal came out, we had something different, which was called the BIP 32 standard, and that was called deterministic hierarchical wallets. So it was still deterministic, but in a different way. It basically just meant that a single string of randomly generated numbers, or what would be called a master private key, would always deterministically produce the same subset of 10 or more private keys, but it was not word-based. And so, why is this important? Who the hell cares? It's important in its own way if you really kind of get into it. There's two great examples. First is it's way easier to write down and visually verifies a phrase that is correct than to even remember what a 36-digit, hex key is in your head. Second, it's actually far safer because BIP39 implements something called a checksum feature. In other words, if you misspell even one word in that string of phrases when you're first writing down that phrase, the wallet will not let you in, but you also won't get fucked over and locked out from your wallet forever. You're probably going to be able to figure out what that word is. It could be a lot more catastrophic. Let's say you just typed 4 different characters in a 36-digit key. You might not get those back. So I think this kind of highlights why it was such an important landmark upgrade to private key security and good practices. And again, the takeaway from that, this shroom fits into Shroomtoshi's first group theme of Bitcoin principles because it's just a fundamental basis of how blockchain works. I think every user should at least be familiar with that concept, no matter what chain you're using. So I love this shroom for so many reasons. And Kenny, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's again, it's like a historical important Bitcoin shroom just because it was part of that Sotheby's auction, right? All of these shrooms, they were the first shrooms that actually got distributed, which is really, really cool. I think this is like stylistically also a really nice shroom. I really enjoy like the small Bitcoin logo, which is in actually like loads of Bitcoin shrooms. Sometimes it's really subtle where you don't actually see it or recognize it too often, but the small
Yeah,
Bitcoin logo is always like an iconic feature in the Bitcoin shroom. So I really like this one. I think obviously, of course, BIP39, super important characteristic of Bitcoin, and yeah, really something to look out for. Obviously, also as you can see on the screen, ZK has already been cooking in the trenches there, and really put some like a really nice collection on chain, and I'm super excited to see that launch. I hope we get it soon. I've been, or I think we've all been waiting for that for a very long time, and yeah, I'm super excited for that as well. But the avocado Bitcoin shroom is a grail for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So here, yeah, let's actually pull up. Let's see. Nope, I don't want that one. So here are the actual bravocados. There are, let's just see what there are. There are a 1K total supply. So yeah, he inscribed those, I believe, a while ago, didn't he? Let's see when the inscription date is in here.
I would guess around a year or so, nearly.
Have they been
it's
sitting
it's
up
been a
there?
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope
Yeah,
you're still
it's
right.
been a while.
Come on, Magic Eden. Where is it? Wow, they don't have an inscription date. Weak. Yeah.
Shrouded in this.
Yeah, there's the green screen again. But yeah, I mean, it to me, it's amazing. Like if someone was going to write a book and they wanted a cool plot, to me, it's like mnemonic phrase, 1224 words, memorize them. Maybe if you're smart and you're using a treasure or one of the ones that support it, you've got your 25th word that you control yourself, which to me, especially with quantum computing coming, like is probably maybe important. I think we'll be fine with quantum stuff for many reasons. And Kenny, I know you did a huge take on that, which we'll get into more in the quantum discussion when we get to those shrooms. But to me, it's so cool that you don't even need the hardware wallet. You just need to memorize the keys or memorize it with loved ones or whatever. And you could cross anywhere in the world when you're set up and you feel like you're safe and secure. You could pull your funds out to take care of your family and take care of, growing a new life. So I know that sounds drastic, especially coming from the United States, but just the fact that that's possible to me it's mind blowing. It's a total game changer in that subtle shift from state power to individual sovereign citizen power.
Totally. Yeah. We talk about the utility of crypto a lot, and mainstream folks may ask you sometimes in question, okay, well, what's the value add that Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies bring to the table? And one thing I usually never forget to say is, although, we've got it pretty good here in the US, we don't live in the same conditions as everywhere in the
Right.
world. And there are real world edge cases where this becomes a very, very important thing. I mean, a great example, imagine you're a Ukrainian citizen, your home's getting shelled, you're trying to get out of there, your currency, maybe you don't know the status of it, and you got to cross the border. You memorize this 24-word seed phrase in your head, you've got plausible deniability and nobody can control those funds. And that is just an absolutely amazing thing that you can transport that value anywhere you go, like you said, with that key in your head. So that's a value add to me.
Thank you, BIP39. All these pieces are so important. And again, why Shroomtoshi, he left no stone unturned. And I know, Kenny and Rolo, you've looked at the collection many, many more times, scrolled it way more than me, all 222. I should say all the few 222. But every time I scroll, I'm like, wait, he made one for that? Like, I'm always surprised every
Mind blown.
time I scroll through it
Same.
that he didn't miss many or any of the things and the building blocks that made Bitcoin and the culture and everything what it is today. So let's move and transition to the next one. So Kenny, why don't you kick us off with this one?
Yeah, this is one that hits home, to be honest. For me personally, this Bitcoin Shroom carries the name Separation of Money and State. And there is actually something I've been wondering, and I think this is a really good medium to kind of have combined brain force, and maybe someone knows what like why Shroomtoshi chose this. I spoke to Rich before about this, and I don't think he knew either, but I'll relay it for everyone. So the info on this Bitcoin Shroom is Bitcoin is the separation of money and Utah and every other state, really. So there is actually the theme of Utah in a couple of different shrooms as well. It kind of keeps coming back. And I was never sure about why he chose Utah. But yeah, that's really interesting. So if anybody does know, definitely hit us up or comment beneath and tell us why you think it's like Utah is a common theme in Bitcoin. But for me, this Bitcoin Shroom is really cool. I know it's overlooked and people think it's maybe not as clean as the others. I think the Bitcoin Shroom logo again here, super subtle on top, which is really nice. And I think this is one of the really important things what Bitcoin does really well, and which fiat money is really lacking. I have I did quite a lot of research on CBDC, which is also another shroom, but I think it's kind of connected to this one as well, right?
Right.
I think money should be independent, and for anybody who's read the book, The Bitcoin Standard, I think that's a really good book which kind of explains fiat money history and why Bitcoin really changes the game in that perspective. To put it really short and simple, traditional money as we have it on like a day-to-day basis, which we pay our groceries with, is soft money. Every single year, more money gets printed, the debt ceilings are raised, and there's always more supply. I think throughout the couple of last years, we've had a lot of issues with inflation, and our money isn't reliable anymore. It's not something that people want to keep. Um, Either they spend it or they try to invest it to kind of keep value. And I think part or a big part of that problem is that governments basically use money as a tool, and I think Bitcoin is really something that solves this problem, because even if the governments decided to increase the supply of Bitcoin, if it was like a global currency or whatever, or even if they wanted to change anything to benefit themselves, they couldn't. They couldn't change Bitcoin even if they wanted to, even if they put all the money they had into changing Bitcoin. They simply cannot change Bitcoin just because of the amount of nodes that are connected and the amount of people that are upholding this Bitcoin software. And you can really say Bitcoin is the best version of itself, because if there was like a way better version, people would probably tend to go to that version. So yeah, this is really like a deep shroom, I think, and it really is supposed to also show the problem of like current currencies. So I really like this one.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes you
Yeah.
realize like everybody knows. Like my dad always said he was kind of a stoic and a bit of a cynic, but he was very very funny and just be like, "There's only two certainties in life," and I'm sure many people have dads who have said this, but he's like, "It's death and taxes," you know. But what people don't realize is, yeah, like we all know the taxes, especially if you own a business, because quarterly you're like, "How much am I paying the state of Illinois and the federal government?" And you know, what's it going to blow up today? You know, so but that one we know, and it's very in our faces, and we pay it, and you know, we get services for it, I guess. But the other one, inflation, is invisible, and that's the one that Kenny made a great point on. Inflation's invisible, and nobody really pays attention to it. I think until like COVID, that's when we realized, like, wow, everything, all building materials, like gas, all our day-to-day lives got like 60% more expensive. What'd they say? It was like, they said it peaked at like 15, 16, 17%, but we all know, especially the stuff we buy every day, was peaking at 50 to like 70%. That stuff, that inflation screws us because we're trying to work and save our acorns for when we retire, for our kids' college. And the fact that our money and our dollars, that soft money, as Kenny says, has a hole in the bucket, and that's leaking out, and it just becomes less and less valuable. That's why we buy stocks. We go out in the risk curve to buy bonds. Bitcoin is the first time where you can literally store an acorn, and that acorn keeps on growing in your little tree. It's incredible. So, you know, hats off, separate money and state and bring it into the hands of the people again. Rolo?
Yeah, don't ask me how, but I think Van Gutenberg's press technology made its way to the central bank. But great points, you guys. I love this shroom for you know many reasons, and inflation is a very important concept that I think people should be aware of. It the indirect, invisible taxation, it's so called. But so I'll jump into this shroom and first stop at our subjective part and it's not my favorite shroom design. It's that there's a lot going on, but
Hey,
you know
somebody owns that
everybody
shroom.
loves their
Remember,
shroom.
somebody owns that shroom. That's all I'm gonna say.
And I oh yeah, and I will point out, yeah, this shroom is currently listed on on the secondary market right now for a low price of 2.2 Bitcoin. So they have a certain love for it, and I don't know who owns it, much about its OTC history, but I give it points for being a very unique shroom. I like the design and the symbols going on in it. Um, so going back to everything you guys just said, Kenny, I have some interesting thoughts or theories on that comment you made about Utah. Feel free to let me know what you think. I may be off the mark here, but um, the description for this room says Bitcoin is the separation of money and Utah and every other state, really. Personally, I think it might be a playful, direct reference to Bitcoin's core philosophy. Just as society achieved separation of church and state, Bitcoin advocates kind of aim to achieve the separation of money and state, like you guys said. And this separation reduces government control over money supply. Um, but that phrase, separation of money in Utah, I think it's intentionally absurd, somewhat unexpected. Why Utah? I think it's a very specific choice in U.S. state and humorously substituted for what you would expect as the word state. So I think that the humor maybe arises from the cognitive dissonance there. It's a playful ad while also making the message a little bit memorable about this piece and kind of introducing a sub theme that goes over multiple shrooms, which is cool. So I think it's kind of poking fun at the Bitcoin maximalist rhetoric where Bitcoin's seen as capable of separating money from all centralized systems, but instead it kind of equates Bitcoin maximalism to something as quirky and specific as the Mormon state of Utah, which is a bit absurd. So, but there's a neat historical tie-in. Utah was originally settled by Mormon pioneers in the 1840s, and they were doing that as an attempt to escape from broader U.S. government control. and kind of separate the church and state for where they settled. So coincidence? I think maybe not, but it's just a grab there. Um, so this shroom again, it's therefore got a deep historical connection to independence, self-governance, and not surprisingly, what I think are our earliest libertarian ideals in the country. So that state of Utah is culturally known for being a very libertarian friendly state, and that's something that I think resonates highly with a lot of Bitcoiners, as we may get into later in the series. But let me know what you think. That was kind of what I was grabbing from this shroom.
Yeah. I wonder if Shroomtoshi's eating popcorn right now. He's like, oh, I just picked a state and it was Utah. And Rolo's going into this, like
You got to wonder.
in 1813, there was a very interesting battle of OK Corral where, so no, I think that's a good take. And this is certainly a fun shroom. I thought Utah, like, I would think like Wyoming, although Wyoming is probably the most pro crypto. They're the first one to adopt decentralized autonomous organizations. You got Cynthia Lumens there. So maybe that actually would be the state you wouldn't do, like maybe Utah, or like for me personally, it'd be Illinois, because, some of these blue states are charging such high real estate taxes and tax on every grocery and everything you buy. That's where it's just like, please just separate money and state, please.
Yeah, there is actually a Wyoming Bitcoin shroom as well, which probably doesn't surprise you. And yeah, I think that's a really interesting theory about Utah. I think the state chain Bitcoin shroom also has a reference to Utah. So yeah, I think all these like small things where you can go so off like the road and go so deep into different theories of why
Right.
he picked that. Obviously, it's kind of like deliberately done that it's like a mystery, but I think that's so cool that there is so much depth in the Bitcoin shrooms, and you can literally spend hours and hours thinking about the details and what the thoughts are behind these things. So I really enjoy these kind of things about the Bitcoin shrooms.
Absolutely.
Shroomtoshi, if you're out there watching, just drop a comment in the sections here. Let us know what you think.
Exactly. Pull up on the space.
All right. So moving along, we all recognize that Penguin as Foss or as Linux, right? Who wants to kick it off with? I believe this is our final shroom of the day, is it not, Rolo?
We may have a couple of others, but
Oh,
if we
we
run
do.
out of time, we can always jump
No,
in
no,
next
we're good
time.
on time. Let's go through them.
Cool. Yeah. Sure, I could take a stab at this. This one is number 706, called Foss. I think you gotta appreciate a really cute, clean animal shroom. I totally love this one. And again, while it's not in my top 30 list, my girlfriend did rank it as one of her top five after I tortured her, showing her the entire shroom catalog. So get some points there. It's a
Notice,
really cool
he
one.
said girlfriend, not wife. The wife would be like, "Don't care." Beat it.
Yeah, that's subject to change. She may leave me for the shrooms, but anyway, this one I think I remember a while back, in the secondary, there was a pretty notable transfer of ownership. I'm not sure who it went to, and Kenny, you might want to jump in there, but somebody had it and sold it, to someone else. But um, it's a really cool shroom. I think, as you said, the penguin is a clear nod to Tux, who is the Penguin Linux mascot. And Linux is the quintessential free and open source software, or FOSS, which is what FOSS stands for. And this shroom is also, I just want to point out, not to be confused with Greg Foss, who is a very prominent Bitcoin advocate and educator as well. I think he became known somewhere around 2020, 2021. So um, the description for the shroom reads: Bitcoin is free and open source. So I think the message here fairly clear. Bitcoin and Linux go hand in hand, both being public, freely distributed software, and open source. Essentially means anyone is allowed to contribute and verify code updates. So accordingly, literally anybody can audit, improve on, or fork the Bitcoin network.
Right.
So um, that is what the shroom is all about.
Yeah, I think you brought up great points there, and I believe this shroom was never traded, and I think
Hmm.
Seng owns this Bitcoin shroom. He's
Yes.
been with the
Yes.
shrooms since the beginning. Absolute goat. Yeah, Ski God also posted it. Seng.
Yeah.
I
Might be
believe
sensing.
yeah, he's from like the Chinese community. Absolute go. I've spoken to him a couple of times. Really cool guy. He's been in the shrooms, as I said, since more or less quite the beginning of the distribution. So really cool community member there as well. And yeah, as I was also like touching on, Bitcoin is kind of the best version of itself, and that is enabled through free open source software because people can check all lines of code within Bitcoin. They can propose updates and things that they think that might be better, and then people can discuss them openly. There's no hiding of secrets or gatekeeping information. People can do what they want, and as you also said, Rollo, even if people think, okay, Bitcoin should have a 1 gigabyte block size, they can just fork the current version of Bitcoin, change whatever they want, and then use Bitcoin or their derivative of Bitcoin however they want. So I think that's really cool. I think that is also part of why Bitcoin has been so successful. Just because it is open for everybody to check on it and also to suggest updates. So very important Bitcoin trim there as well.
Yep. Everything open source is key. We want privacy and we want to hold our own keys, but this is another part of kind of that triumvirate to have citizenry over corporatism and statism. Um, Very cool. So, do you guys want to head to the next one?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
we got a nice. Yeah, go ahead, Kenny.
Yeah, so the next Bitcoin shroom is P2P. Some might say peer to peer, some might say pair to pair. Really cool Bitcoin shroom. I love like the whole fruit vibe of the Bitcoin shrooms. Obviously, also super important Bitcoin shroom. Shroomtoshi commented on this one. Bitcoin is pair to pair. No trusted authorities or third parties, only a network of sovereign individuals. Um, super real statement, obviously, and also one of the first really important things about Bitcoin, right? I mean, before Bitcoin, there was no option or no real option of doing transactions digital without a third party. So, for example, if you did a bank transfer or you use PayPal or whatever, there would always need to be a third party through which this transaction runs who verifies that you have the money, and it then obviously takes away the money from your account and then sends it to the second person who is in that transaction. And with Bitcoin, the whole problem of double spending was solved. And as you guys know, there is no third party through which you need to transact. You can transact peer to peer, and yeah, I mean, Bitcoin solves this. Absolutely real. And back in the day, and even still until today, absolute game changer for digital transactions. So really cool and important shroom there as well. Aesthetically, also a cool one. Not one of my favorites, I would say, but still a really nice one.
I don't know, Rolo, Kenny. You guys have a lot that aren't your favorites. They're all my favorites because I like to
They're
be
all
in with the
incredible, but
community. But I hear what you guys are saying. There's definitely aesthetics, and like all the European country heads. Like there's that clean, rounded crown kind of look that if you had to pick it, obviously all of them have the two eyes and the top of the face with the kind of outline of the ears, but some definitely work better than others. I kind of like this one. I like the colors, but I know what you mean, because some of them, they're kind of sized differently, don't fit differently, and I feel like we were always going to compare them to the mushroom, the very traditional mushroom cap with some sort of a logo on it with the face underneath.
Totally. And I think that's some of the beauty of this collection too. There are so many good ones. And it's why I was kind of asking around and gathering people's list of favorites, because what became apparent was so many people like different ones. There are some overlaps, but everybody just loves different ones for all of these different reasons. And you kind of want there to be some ones you're gonna love and maybe even hate. But yeah, this shroom, I like it a lot personally. It's clean, maybe a little understated, but love the neon green, love the food aesthetic. It's a bright color, and I don't know who owns it, or what it went for on OTC either. I don't know too much about the history of this one, from market perspective. But Kenny, I think, beautifully outlined everything about the Bitcoin lore behind this one. So I think the only thing that I would just touch upon it is, this is where I put my quote unquote art scholar hat on, and maybe grab a little bit here. So uh, correct me again if I'm off the mark, but I think as a fruit, pears grow naturally, which might symbolize Bitcoin's organic and natural growth through decentralization. For example, how nodes and end users propagate the network on their own. It doesn't need any advertisement. It's going to run itself, which I think is pretty neat. So depicting a fruit, this collection is very purposeful. The symbolism, the art, the symbols that he chooses, I think oftentimes, if not all the time, were not by accident. And so it does beg the question, why did he make this shroom as a pear, other than the cute reference of pear to pear? Why make that cute pun? And so again, I kind of go back to that, like depicting a fruit with a leaf at the top. It might also be just a symbol for a self-sustainable system. A pear tree can sustainably, like I said, keep itself alive without any outside interference. And it's pretty similar to how, again, Bitcoin users are self-sovereign individuals, and they keep the network going on their own. We don't need banks. We don't need middlemen. We don't need paid network advertising to make this thing run. So the tree of life, so to say, and that's maybe what the shroom was getting at.
Perhaps, or it's just a pun. But yeah, no,
Or it's just a pear.
I love the deeper thoughts. Like, Rolla, I could see you in like a grocery store and some guy holds you up, takes your wallet. They're like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" Be like, no. He's not holding me up and taking my money. It's a metaphor for the different stratospheres and the different hierarchies of life. Don't you see? This black eye is a metaphor for, they're like, "Dude, you just got your ass kicked and your wallet taken." You'd be like, "Hold on, no." So anyway, I thought I'd make fun of you there.
Analyze that one first.
To me, this can be summed up. I own a business and I send a lot of ACH and wires. And I don't know if you guys notice this, and Kenny, I don't know how it is in Europe, but in America, when I send ACHs, I would say in the last 2 years, it went from like, your money transaction will be processed, like they'll get it tomorrow. And now it's like, "Thank you for submitting it. We'll let you know when it's approved." Like, real subtle, but it's like, wait a second. So I'm getting permission to run my business and send someone my money to pay for the services that they provided me. Like, to me, that subtle language, it's like slowly, suddenly, all at once, like, no, thank you. That's my money. That's not your money. And you know what I could do about it before Bitcoin? Nothing. I could buy land, houses, and gold and stuff it, bury it in my backyard. And now I can hold Bitcoin and be like, you know what? What does Bartleby the Scrivener say? Like, when they ask him to do a job at work, he's like, "Thank you, sir, but I'd prefer not to." So, thank you for your approval, Chase or BMO, but I don't want it and I don't need it.
100%.
Yeah,
Man. I think that's another. Oh,
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
go ahead, Rollo.
Oh, just gonna quickly just touch upon that. Just say I think that's one of those other major wake up calls for most Bitcoin users. That time when you actually first realize, uh, okay, I can send this and nobody could do a damn thing about
Yep.
it. But if Chase Bank wants to call me and say, hey, we noticed you sent a lot of money. You know, we're gonna pause this for a few days. There's not much you could do about that. And yeah, I think it's a great point. Kenny, go
And
ahead, man.
and we know people in crypto who have been debanked, Kenny.
100%.
Yeah, like especially when we also look at international transactions, right? I mean, one thing is like national transactions, but if you want to send money in a different country, I mean, like couple days turns into a couple of
Mm-hmm.
weeks sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and if you are like sending money regular, then it can become really, really expensive as well. And with Bitcoin, it doesn't matter if you're sending money to your neighbor or to someone on the other side of the world. It's all the same, peer to peer, no third parties. So, yeah.
100%. So that transitions us to the last one of this theme, which is what was the theme of this first one, guys? The first 8?
Fundamental principles.
Fundamental principles. So what are we looking at here? Googly eyes and a check mark.
Kenny, you
Yeah,
want to take
this
this one?
one is, yeah, I'll go ahead. Thank you. This one is obviously a big one again. I mean, all of the Bitcoin principles are obviously super important. Otherwise, there wouldn't be the principles. But this is, as you can probably see, don't trust, verify. And Shroomtoshi comments on this. Fourth rule, don't trust, verify. Run Bitcoin and become a pair. And yeah, I mean this is a super cool shroom. I think it's I think it's really nice. It really symbolizes what it's supposed to mean. Very obvious one, this one, not understated, and yeah, hints on something really important. And also, I'm not sure, Rollo, if this is the last shroom, then like for our next session, we will. This kind of introduces the next session, which I think is really cool, and you'll
Yes.
probably gather what it is. But I mean, on Bitcoin, everything is public. You can verify every single transaction
Right.
which was ever sent. And that is the beauty of Bitcoin. There is no hiding. There are no real fraudulent transactions because everybody can see it publicly. And that also means that everybody can verify it manually. And that gives a lot of safety benefit to everybody who's involved in Bitcoin. And I think it's also a security feature because if everybody can see what everybody else is doing, it kind of leaves no room for people to misbehave. And if they do misbehave, it becomes obvious very, very quickly. And I think this can also be something broader, right? It cannot just be verifying transactions on Bitcoin, but also something in general with crypto, right? Clicking links, seeing if the information posted from an account might be fraudulent or impersonators, all these different things. So I think this is a much more broader shroom, or can be interpreted that way. And yeah, super important again.
Yeah, this one it's a beauty. I'm really a fan of this one just from the aesthetic standpoint. Can't tell you why I think this one's highly underrated. I just that something about the googly eyes. I love it. I love the white, green, black motif. It's a super clean shroom, and um, secondary market OTC history again, not too knowledgeable on that. But this shroom, like Kenny was saying, it's definitely got some very important fundamental values baked in there, and uh, this is gonna be a little bit of a nerd out corner on this final section. So, dudes, yank me if I
Yeah.
lose you.
Go for it.
For the technically inclined, hopefully, this makes some sense. If I'm losing you, I'm just gonna try to outline
Out with
some,
it.
yeah, some very very important concepts here. So um, you know, users are encouraged to run their own full nodes in order to verify the entire Bitcoin ledger for themselves. And so, it's actually really the only true way to know that the version of the Bitcoin ledger that you're downloading is a legitimate one. Otherwise, if you use a private wallet, you connect to a website on your browser, third-party server, you could be, fed someone else's copy of the blockchain, which technically speaking, could be phony. 99% of the time, it's probably not, but you can't really
Right.
cover for that 1% tail end risk. So there is a, in some realm of reality, there's a real, security issue there. Shroomtoshi made that cheeky reference again. It can be a real pair or peer. Um, doing so makes the blockchain more robust. And so in anticipation for some of our upcoming shrooms where we're going to talk about node technology a little bit, I figured it's time for a little short lesson on the difference between a Bitcoin node and a Bitcoin miner in order for this concept of verification to kind of make sense, because they're fundamentally different. And we're going to touch upon that a little later. But um, so what is a node? A node is something that downloads an entire copy of the Bitcoin blockchain and then verifies the transactions. And in that verification process, the nodes are there to check that there's one, no double spends, two, there are proper transaction signatures, and three, that all of the inputs are unspent. And we'll get into what UTXOs are. But they also help verify that newly mined blocks meet all of those rules. And so one protocol rule is that transactions that are bundled inside what's called a Bitcoin block, as this is a blockchain, are all verified transactions. So another rule is that cryptographic proof of work has to be done by the miners that broadcast that block. And maybe that doesn't make sense right now, but we're gonna hit upon that a couple of times. But so the nodes, they broadcast valid transactions and blocks to other nodes to keep the network in sync. The nodes talk to each other and verify continually that the blockchain actually is agreed upon. And this is essentially as peer-to-peer or pair-to-pair as it gets. Literally anybody can run a node. You just have to have enough storage space and bandwidth. And there's actually no reward for doing so. So the miners, on the other hand, that's a totally different concept. So miners are simply something that bundle up valid transactions into a newly formed block. So these are the guys that add the block to the chain. And in doing so, they basically solve complex cryptographic puzzles and arbitrarily burn electricity to make Bitcoin difficult to produce. And so, miners, again, as I mentioned, they submit the blocks, and then the Bitcoin nodes validate those blocks before they add them to the chain. So in return for that energy expenditure that the miners do, you hear all about miners in the world burning electricity. It's been a very controversial subject, and we'll get into that with other shrooms. But you know, in return for that, the miners are rewarded a transaction fee and then a block reward, which is basically unminted Bitcoin. So not everybody can mine. You can run a node, but mining is a little difficult these days. You need an insane hardware setup in today's state of affairs. Although you can do your own kind of one-man venture. It's just a
It's
little
still
tougher
doable.
now.
It's not like Solana
It's
where you need to
possible.
be like on fiber and tied fully in. You can get a miner. I mean, they're expensive right now,
You
but you can
certainly
get
can
one
go
for
solo.
5-10 grand. But the
Yeah,
hardest part obviously is the energy cost. You need to be like next to a
correct.
nice hydro renewable, or at least in a state that has some excess energy that gives good prices, or at least commercial prices. In Illinois, it's not very competitive because it's not a very run state, very well run state. But it is. I think
Totally.
it's definitely doable as an individual. It's not easy, but it's doable.
Yes. So I think adjusting that statement for the initiated and the hobbyist, you certainly can make your own one-man solo setup. Just requires a little technicality, and efficiency is really the name of the game if you want it to be profitable. But um, in summary, again, the nodes act as the gatekeepers, and then the miners secure the network through the proof of work and keep it decentralized. So that's pretty much it. So hopefully someone's not asleep there and got something from that. But if you're all asleep, hey, we'll catch you at the next episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is the first wave of shrooms. Again, the thematic of all of these is what is it, Rolo?
This one or the next one?
No. The thematic of the first series. This is
Oh, we're on fundamental principles.
okay. And then what can they expect next week before we do our giveaway?
Yeah, next week we're going to dive into best practices.
Cool. So yeah, we've bundled these. There's 27 categories, but a bunch of them are like there's a bunch of 8s and 9s, shrooms collated together, but there's some 2s and 3s, so we'll put those together. So I suspect, guys, we'll probably have 20 shows, give or take. But this has been super fun for me. I appreciate both you guys. So let's get to the good stuff, the fun stuff. Let's do the giveaway. So anybody, this is your last chance to, I'm just going to pick the people who, it's pretty much the same people who came on the show and who reposted it. So Rolo, I'm going to ask you to give me a number in a second, but everyone has one last shot to repost this and tell them to watch it. I'll give them like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, Rolo, give me a number between 1 and 3.
All right, let's go split down the middle. Let's go 2.
Okay, congratulations, Stephen Miller. My screen's teeny. So Stephen Miller wins the t-shirt. If you're still listening, we will get you this awesome shirt. We will do a giveaway every week, guys. We're going to do a better job of promoting this too early. The show is going to be on Thursdays, either this time or 1 hour later, but we're going to pre-promote this way more. But this has been a super fun show, guys. Is there anything else you want to close with on this one? Stephen Miller says, woo hoo. He's got the Bitcoin Shrooms pizza.
Let's go.
Pizza shroom.
No, it's been a blast.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Can't wait to do it again.
Absolutely. Rolo, appreciate you. Kenny, appreciate you. Guys are more knowledgeable than anyone I know. So with that, guys, we're out of here until next week.
See you guys.
And I almost forgot, this is God speaking. For those listening, go to the Hell Money Podcast and support Casey and Aaron and their missions. Go to the Hell Money Podcast because it's for subscribers and it's happening right now.